Live. We're live. Yes, we are good to go.
Oh, yes. Hello and welcome everybody. This is the Talking Stick Show, normally run by Dale Tobin of Symmetry of Health, but he's not too well tonight. He might be able to pop in and out. So I'm standing in for him. My name is Laura Massey from Two Feathers Medicine. Many of you know me and Dale from working with Matty Waller and Andrew Bartsitz on many shows. And also I'd like to introduce tonight on the Talking Stick Show our lovely guest, Amy Kruzik.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Great to have you here, Amy. You've been on a few times too with myself, Andrew, and the guys. So this is not totally new for you. But we've brought up, Amy has suggested a new topic tonight, which I think is great. I'd like to investigate it more, and Amy would like to look at the dying process. So I've got a certain amount of experience with this with my parents, but I'd like to hear what Amy would like to look at, what her experiences are. And also, I think, Amy, you wrote something a couple of years ago now about death, and I thought it would be a good idea if you read that, and then you wanted to look maybe at how your views had changed and why, which I think is a fabulous way to start.
Yeah, so I took a class with Liv Wheeler and the Contemple, and the Contemple asked us a question in the class, and they wanted us to write about it, but I never really put it out there. And the question that they asked, and this was done September 2021, so about a year and a half ago. How do we honor death more so? That was their question. So I haven't read it since then. So I'm interested, like I said, to see what my views are. If they're different, if they're not different. Hello, death. I am inviting you to come to have a conversation with me. What is it you would like me to know, death? There are fears within me that I haven't looked at yet. Oh, my dear Amy, I am an experience to have when you come to Mother Earth as a human. Remember that everything is provided here on Mother Earth for you to have an experience from life to death to decay, and to be honored as a process of your evolution. I am part of that evolution. It is not to be feared or afraid of, because such as you honor life, you honor death. It is your birthright and legacy from the time you entered into your mother's womb and Earth Mother's womb. You came here to experience life, and with life comes death. You just forgot that you chose this. No matter the hours, minutes, days, weeks, or years, you entered onto Mother Earth's through the womb of your mother. It is your experience to be honored and remembered. What else do you want me to know, death? Because I do want to honor you in the most reverential way possible. Because I know there are depths here to be felt. Oh, dearest Amy, please let go of the so-called fear of death. Know that you have life that sustains the very being that you are right now in this moment of now, filled with your true spirit of light that is life. Have faith and trust in the great mystery of life in order to honor death as a woven cycle through life. To love being here on Mother Earth is to honor death with the beauty it holds within your endless soul that continues to incarnate with you as you evolve, learn, and let go. And you start remembering everything that you are, the infinite being inside you, your soul, spirit, that has been with you for infinity, so that you can experience the beauty and honor of death that is life.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah, beautiful. And you've not read,
I've not
excuse
read
me.
it.
No, you've
I was
not.
getting like chills and, I was like, wow, okay.
When did
You've
you
not-
write that, Amy?
Oh, sorry, Dale, didn't know you were here.
September 2021.
Wow.
So
Beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, so well, that was kind of a conversation. It was so interesting how I wrote it, as a conversation. I've never written like that before, now that I'm saying it. So the fears, I asked if there's still, the fear, and I would have to say yes to that. The not knowing of how I'm going to go. I think that would be a fear for me.
Do you feel you need to know?
No, but what
Okay.
is the feeling? It's like, I don't think that I need to know, but I often wonder what is it this time, how I'm gonna leave this earth.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is some kind of like, because so many perspectives, right, could happen.
Yeah.
So I think I can be in that, like, and then I thought, well, we do pass our death date every year, like if you want to go on the timeline, like, so it's just, did I pass it yesterday? I don't know. There's some kind of these weird, like, little things I think about.
And yes, and how relevant is that? Because is that also a source of your fear? Yeah, it's quite an interesting one, because I think interwoven in that is the trust that Great Mystery and Great Spirit will deliver you to the other side when you've planned and not before.
When I planned, that's right. I do keep
your
saying
soul
that.
made the plan. Yeah.
Yes, I do keep saying that. I know the plan. But the human is like, we don't know the plan. What is the plan?
That's it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you called it a conversation. Did you call it a conversation with death? I think I've just named
I
it that in my
did.
head.
Well, I think
You
there's a
did?
book
Yeah.
called that, but
Is
yeah,
there? Okay.
I think Conversation with God, I think that's a book.
Oh yeah, Neil
But
Donald
it's
Walsh.
the way I
Yeah.
wrote it, like we're talking on the telephone or something, That's
Well,
how
I
it felt.
think that's how so many of these downloads come through. And then we question them. Did you question it much afterwards? Were you doubtful? Or, you obviously, you wrote it and then put it aside?
Yeah, I kind of wrote it and then reread it. And then I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. That's interesting. And then I just put it away.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't
But
revisit
you trust
it.
in the process. You trust in your process.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the difference now is, I was asking the question because I didn't think that I did trust in the process. But I think reading it again, it gave me that comfort of, well, that's why you came here, silly.
Yeah.
That's you do trust in the process because you've been here before. You just didn't remember. And
having that has helped you gain some clarity.
Yeah. Now that I read it again, yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Go on.
No, I was just thinking, I can feel, I've not seen many people. Haven't been with many people that have died. But it feels peaceful to me. I think it's the other side, the people watching it. There is a different feeling. Do you feel that? Like, don't go. Like, what's the word I want to use?
You mean like
the
we're
person lying
holding
there
on this side? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
When
Whether
they're
it's
ready to go.
Right. Like they feel at peace to me, but we're still like mourning and I've had a quick death and I've had a long death that I've been part of, and neither one is, feels.
So do you want to describe both those experiences then and see what we can get from those?
Well, the first one was my dad, and he was a quick death. I just got a phone call, heart attack, but it happened in the operating room. So that was like what? Like you couldn't even like get that in there, because last time I talked to him, he was going in to have an operation. So that was different in a way where it comes as a surprise, but then again, death always is kind of a surprise. You know. And then my first death happened at 35, so that was really the first time anybody close to me died. And then my father-in-law passed almost to the day my dad died a year later. His was more of a long process with cancer, but we're far away, so it wasn't like we can just go see him every day. But I guess there's 3 deaths then, because then his wife died. We took care of her and she died, and I watched her die. So I've never really watched anybody die like her.
Right. Okay. So you've not been with anybody through the dying process?
Well, when do you say what's your take on the start of the dying process? Because
it could be actually, yes, it's probably not a good question. At the end, I should say, when they're going to start their final journey, because shamanically, I think the dying process can start, I don't know, 10 years beforehand, because in various shamanic traditions, the various elements affect the human body. So I think the first to have an effect is the earth element. And that is a breakdown, probably slightly physically. I made some notes here earlier. Basically, it's related to the skeleton, the flesh and the bones, and your strength and vitality and zest for life is affected. And you start getting tired, more tired and more frail. So these are notes I made from a course some time ago. So I'll just refer to them now because it might be quite useful for people going through this. And then the second withdrawal of the element from the body is water. So if earth is first, the sense of smell goes first, and then in water the sense of taste starts to go. Please don't hear this and think I'm losing my taste when
I know, right?
Okay, so let's not get, read this the wrong way. This is just notes I made. So water is obviously your blood, your liquid in the body, and it affects your teeth and mouth. And obviously if it's liquid in the body, it's also incontinence. And you can go through a stage of being weepy, clingy and lonely. And then the next element to leave the body is fire, and that's a fast withdrawal. So that's major organs, heart, lungs, liver, kidneys. You get temperature fluctuations, agitation, and hands and feet can go cold. And this one affects our sight. So this is the next one to start. I mean, these things can happen over a long period of time. We're not talking about stuff that is going to happen overnight, And then the last one must be air, yes, which is the lungs and the ears, where you would have labored breathing and a bowel evacuation, and it affects hearing and touch. Yeah, I did know that the last sense to leave us is hearing, and apparently touch as well. So it's interesting. That I think is a very general shamanic take on it. And then there's all sorts of other shamanic things we can look at, because I picked up the word honor in what you said in your nice little piece at the beginning. And I don't know what your view is on this. I mean, obviously, because I'm a shamanic practitioner, I bring honor and sacred space into a lot of things I do. And that's something I just like to look at. But I feel a lot of the dignity has been taken away from the dying, because they end up, like your father-in-law, like you were saying, possibly in hospital. And of course, it's a completely just physical process. And I know Dale has got, you know, his experience last year, was it, with your father as well, Dale?
Yeah,
You know,
yes, it
so
was.
you've got some experiences to add here.
Yeah, so he passed away. So the last Christmas, so not last Christmas, the Christmas before, we like all had a meal. We all had Christmas time together, and you could tell something was up with him because he like had a few drinks. He just sat on the sofa, and he never sits on the sofa. And we were like, oh, he must be tired because of work. And we actually had the champagne he really liked as well, because every Christmas time we get a little bottle of champagne and we have a toast. And something was different about him. Then he came over to do the put some stuff up around the garden, because he did all the handy stuff when I grew up. So he always continued to do that when he was older. I think he really liked doing that. And all of a sudden he just started having a limp. He went to hospital and had a biopsy, and he had like a very rare brain tumor. I think it was like 4%. 4% of people have the brain tumor, the guaiomola. I can't remember the full name of it. And from having diagnosis, he passed away in just under 3 months, or maybe 2.5 months. And it basically, they thought he was going to have 12 months to 18 months. But we basically went back after a month to try, check it out and stuff, see if it was all everything, see what's happening with time frames and stuff. And they said they've not seen anything like it growing so fast. And it didn't grow like a normal tumor. So normal tumors grow and expand just out. This type of tumor, there are variations where it's like a spider web. So it's like one part grows, then it goes into a spider web into another bit of the body. And it just basically grows little webs everywhere. So it's impossible to have surgery and take it out, because you'll be brain damaged. And so from then, said it was crazy how he didn't respond. He didn't respond to chemo. My honest opinion about the chemotherapy, I'm not saying it for everyone, specifically for my father, I feel that to have chemotherapy, you have to be a very strong emotional person, because it takes the badness and the goodness out of you. So you have to be a very, very strong person to get through it. And I felt like it killed him faster, because all the goodness he had, all everything he was going through, the chemo. Sometimes it works for people, it does. There are times it works and helps them, but specifically just for my dad, he passed away, and my mum found him at like 4 a.m. just on the floor, because she used to wake up and get him a cup of tea in the morning and do him some toast, because he never slept. He was just basically in pain, rolling over. And what would you imagine that, like, let's think about having cancer in our head growing so fast. Like, you wouldn't sleep, you wouldn't be able to think. You'd just be in a constant I'm scared state, not knowing what's going on. You're kind of like a limbo. And she came down at like 4 a.m. What she usually comes down to get him a cup of tea, and she has breakfast at like 3 a.m. with him, because he never sleeps really. So she's always up at like 3 a.m. with him. And she came and he was just in the corner. So I think what he tried to do was, he got up, he turned the light on, and he tried to open the door to get some air. And as soon as he got up to turn the light on, he must have gone over on his wheelchair. And as soon as he was about to open the door, that was when he passed away. And he went straight, he went into the corner face first, and obviously we saw him. And for me, it was weird, because when I looked at him, when I came, Gabrielle woke me up and told me. I remember it clear as day. It was awful, finding out the news at like 3:30 or whatever it was. Got a taxi straight over to Harrogate, and I saw him. So I didn't physically go up to him, but I saw him in the room, and I saw his arm in the air like that. And it just reminded me of my body. I was proper freaked out, because his arm looked like my arm. And that's when I realized how similar his body was to mine, and obviously the DNA I share with him and stuff like that. So he basically just died, like in the click of a finger, and left a lot of shock with everyone. And it's probably one of the hardest things I've dealt with. I think mourning is the hardest thing to deal with personally, to come to terms with, and the weirdness, because you're basically like calling for them, and they're there in your 3D reality, and all of a sudden, even though you're spiritual and there's a spirit world, there's still that 3-dimensional the free monkey mind. I want them back, I want to spend time, and blah blah. It's hard, isn't it? It's a hard process to come to terms with. And how the synchronicity of us speaking about this tonight, because basically my mum has been wanting a visitation from him for a long time, and we actually had a reading with Andrew straight after he died. And he was saying that for her to get the visitation, she had to let go of him. He wouldn't visit her until she let go of him. And he stayed over for like the first time in a few years, and she actually had a normal night with her grandkids staying. The next night she woke up and she heard him saying, because he usually goes love when he calls to my mum, he calls her love. That's all he says. So in his Yorkshire accent, he said she woke up for him. She was like half between sleep, half awake, and all she heard was clear as day is him saying love, love. And she knew she knew he was right next to her. So she had a visitation last night, yesterday morning, after a year and a half or however long it was, because she was at that next stage of letting him go further, so she could let go of the physical to see his infinite side. And that's what Andrew was saying. What happens with them is letting go of the kind of the 3D of them, but seeing the eternal them. And she had this hard time doing that because she was holding on. So I thought I'd add that as talking about death. And she had a visitation finally, and when she told me, I was like, fuck yes. I was so happy for her. I was like, I was like always saying, please give my mum a visitation, so she knows that he's real. And she knew he was there. The voice perfectly, like his voice, just saying love, love, like that, like talking to her, and she was just like, yeah, it was incredible. That
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And I'm so pleased for her, because you have had a visitation in a different way, haven't you, from your father, which was your sort of, I know you believe anyway, but it really was confirmation for you that he was okay. I think,
yes.
Dale, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. The Peaky Blinders story. We'll talk about this again because I feel it's important. So my dad used to love Peaky Blinders, and me and used to him be able to bond over it. We didn't bond over a lot of things, me and my dad, and that's just the way it was. And I loved him for who he was, even though the communication really wasn't as kind of like, we didn't talk about deep stuff about life and stuff like that. But he basically wanted to watch the last episode of Peaky Blinders, and he passed away, so he couldn't see it. And the first episode I watched, it came out, and I was so excited to see it. And I was like, I wish, obviously, funny if my dad's watching it with me. So I watched the first episode, and I shut my laptop, turned it off. As soon as I turned it off, I saw his face. It's like it was pitch black when I turned it off, and it's like a light came on. So it was like a big light all in front of me. Then all of a sudden, his face was just smiling at me, and it's most perfect image of his face, just looking and smiling at me like I was watching it with you. So that was really, really cool. And I told all my family that, and that was for me kind of my connection and message I had with him. So yeah, and it's a tough one, death, isn't it? It's such a weird process, and I think for everyone. How was it for you, Laura, with obviously you're dealing with the father and stuff? What was it like for you? Because I know you were going backwards and forwards, and to think one thing, then for it to completely spin the other way. How can you, what helped you with that, and what were some of the healing processes you went through?
Well, yeah, what helped me with that is, I mean, beliefs go a long way, don't they? But even so, because I'd emotionally worn myself down, and I think we talked about this with Andrew on another show, actually, I made myself very open and very vulnerable to other sorts of entities, but that's another entity story. He basically died, and they were going to record the time of death, and then he came back because we had some karma to resolve, and I had some lessons to learn, which is fantastic. And I'll forever thank him for doing that, because in the few months he lived after that, and he had to go on life support. He had pneumonia, and life support for him was a living hell. When he came round, he told me what life support was like for him, because I think he had to relive a lot of his, almost like, not a life review, but almost like that. He had to relive a lot of events and things he had done in his life, and look at them. And I can't imagine actually what that would have been like, being on life support and being, I don't know, in a semi-conscious. Well, he remembered, and when he came round, he could only write things down, not speak, for a good, couple of days. And it took him a while to go after that. And despite the shamanic training I had, because this is something I was still learning. It wasn't like I could step in as a shaman, and I don't know, you always can anyway, put it that way. I did with my mum, and I did a lot of work during the early dying process, during her dementia and so on. But with my dad, I'd got myself so haunted and so weak, I was no good, and I couldn't have been with him as he passed anyway, because I had opened myself up to so many different energies that I would just get attacked and make myself weaker. But I'm a great believer that really, with great mystery and great spirit, this is, was how it's meant to be, and was a lesson for me. And it's something, by the by, I got sorted later on with cranial sacral therapy, because I was holding the practitioner located a big black thick knot in my heart and asked me what I saw, and it was the guilt of not being there for my father's passing, and he was actually able to release that for me. So I learned a lot from having to go through what I went through, the exhaustion and so on, and it's only because I've learned that now I can share and help others, and that's what it's about. But after he passed, I had some wonderful help and advice from Andrew. Who else? And one of them was, and I wish we'd done this more, was there's three of us, and we had to get the house empty. He lived on his own, and get the things sold. But Andrew's advice was, particularly like with my dad's collection of books that he was very partial to. Andrew felt that he would come back and visit, and we'd started splitting up his stuff, whereas we really should have left it for a while and allowed him to come and visit, because Andrew said he will come back to visit, because they come back to visit where they last were, basically. Although he died in a nursing home, we were in his home. And I felt in retrospect, that we could have not rushed things quite so much. But you have to deal with the physical world too, and other people's requirements who don't have your belief or didn't have my belief. And I'm not sure how much we helped. I did my best. I saged the house, and everything that came to my house I saged as well. And then Andrew said to me, don't speak to him, because I said, shall I make contact? And he said, no, you've got to leave this for a good few weeks and allow your father to have his life review. And then when you do make contact, do a little sort of ritual, or set up a little prayer. I've got a prayer space, but especially in honor of him. So I'd have, obviously his photos and paintings he painted and things like that. And then Andrew said to me to remember the joyous times, because I did struggle. I was grieving quite a lot because of the guilt that I couldn't be with him, and because of also what I was releasing with what I'd been through and the lessons I'd been learning, the martyrdom lessons I'd been learning, of visiting him a lot and getting involved in other people who were dying in hospital. We talked about this on another show, Dale, where I thought I carried enough light that I could help everybody there. A light worker attitude.
Yes, light worker Laura here.
It's okay.
Instead of nurse top, you got a light worker jacket on.
The Florence Nightingale of light workers. Yeah. So you do have to laugh at it too. There's nothing wrong in flipping the frequencies on this, but there were a lot of lessons in there, and it's a funny one, because although you like to, I see how people don't die with dignity. Maybe they die alone in hospital, and we need to find the balance again. I'm not saying to interfere, and your dad's came really suddenly, Dale. So when we looked at the elements of the release of the elements from the body, your father's must have happened sort of quite quickly, in a way, because it all happened very quickly. Probably with my dad it wasn't so. Well,
so when he passed away, and this is all when I spoke to Andrew about it as well, he had such a strong connection to the other side that he didn't stay for long. He went quite fast to the other side, And there was a part of him which wanted to stay, but innately he knew that there was a bigger kind of journey and reason why he had to die like that. And he had his life review, and he basically realized that the lifetime he had, he was meant to fulfill that person of not talking, having a brain tumor. All of what he had set up was spiritually contracted to him at the fetus. And one of the hardest things for me was trying to step away from being a zealot when he was ill, because I wanted to help him so bad, and I was trying to get cannabis oil left, right, and center. That it was like a big mission, and I thought I could heal him, I could save him. And I remember that I had a reading with Andrew, the first one I had before he passed away, and he basically was just saying, which I knew innately, but my ego and zealot side didn't, was that he just wanted me to be a son. He didn't want me to be a spiritual person towards him. He didn't want me to talk about anything spiritual at all. He just wanted, plain as day, me to be there as a friend and as a son till he passed. That's what he wants. And for the bigger picture of him he was a huge lesson. His death was a big lesson for him and all of the Soul family about grieving and how to grieve properly this lifetime, because we've had thousands of lifetimes where, as a Soul family, I'm not sure that, like, my cousins and all the people mourning and friends and stuff like that, basically found it hard and didn't mourn him properly. And it's been times I found my dad, I've been the guy dead on the floor. So my dad's found me suddenly on the floor in a past life. My mum's found me dead suddenly. I found my mum before I found my dad, and everyone's found each other really dead fast. So this one was basically a lesson for us to mourn the right way this lifetime, honor him as an ancestor and let him go, because we're going to heal like thousands of years of karma from just being able to mourn the right way. And it was that process for my mum. My mum found it so hard, but she's done so well, done really, really well. And obviously that visitation was a confirmation that she's on the right journey for it. And the more she lets go of him, there was actually a potential of my dad to be a spirit guide to my mum. And Andrew said that if my mum let go of him, and more than it, let go of him enough, my dad would become a spirit guide to her as well. And so when I pass on and I drop the red ropes and I go on the red robe, and I go onto the blue road of spirit, I know there's going to be an aspect of him waiting, and he's set up an aspect of his self waiting for me, my mum, my sister, and everyone to greet us when I do pass on. And basically what we'll do with that aspect is we'll plan future lifetimes together, so we meet in synchronicity again. So when we go into the spirit world, part of him will be waiting for us, saying, oh yeah, then it would be like, right, how are we going to meet up in future lives and have a synchronistic event where we both look at each other in the eyes and go, I know you and you know me, and stuff like that. And that was so beautiful. And so he's got that part of him waiting. But Andrew said he's going to come back in 3 years, and he knows 80% he's going to be back in a body in 4 years time. So he's just learning. Apparently he's doing lots of learning, realizing he's got a soul family from other parts of the universes and galaxies and everything like that. My dad, I'm like, my dad's like, yeah, realizing his family's not from this universe, and he's got, and I'm like, you're talking about my fucking dad here, and I thought I was a spiritual one. He's outfucked me.
I find that extra amusing, because I always find Yorkshire men, that you must be the exception, Dale. I said to you once, I think they'd be the last ever to turn to spirituality in some ways. I think I married a Yorkshireman first time round, so that's lovely. Dale, what well, both of you really. So the mourning process, what did you learn with your dad, Dale, about the mourning process then?
I learned that all the drama and the bullshit of little arguments, falling out with people is just pointless in a way. Obviously, you'll experience that, but to forgive people, to enjoy the moment and not judge people and not get so alright about family members. These don't do enough for me. These don't do enough for me. All of that little small chatter for me when he passed on made me realize that I've got to just honor and enjoy my time spent with my mum, my granddad, because it's not going to be forever. And death taught me that I've got to really appreciate the moment of the now and experience more, do more in the now, do more memories with my granddad, more memories with my mum, and not hold on to stuff. It made me realize that I needed to let go of stuff a lot easier in my life. And the small things, the big things became small, And so for me, it gave me perspective really of appreciating everyone and seeing even the guy down the road who's not spiritual at all, just exactly the same as me, because that's his purpose. He's chosen to be there. Even though I'm doing the work on myself, I'm no different than that person. We're all on the same path. And to see that as my dad and how great he was. So yeah, that for me, Laura, was probably the best thing about it. Was my ego got checked and I realized what's important really. It's not about who you are or how many friends are out like that. It's just about you enjoying life and enjoying your friends and family around you. So I changed as a person, I really did. And I became much more, I don't like using the word humble, but I became a bit more humble with life and a bit more at peace with life. And his death gave me a stronger connection to spirit. So my connection to the faith and everything grew more and more when he died. So yeah. Amy, what was it like for you? What was it? What
Yeah,
about for
what's the mourning process for you?
I didn't know what I know now. I wasn't even starting my journey then. I was still in the Catholic religion mode. So I would say it was very sad for me because my dad happened quick and we were really close, you know, and I just couldn't believe it. I had 2 young kids. I honestly did not even, how do you talk to a child when you don't even know how to talk to a child about a death? This was my first death. So it's like, how do I even teach them what they're feeling? So I'm sure they're holding on to a lot of things right now because this was 25 years ago. But I would say the mourning process, I think I was just, sad. I mean, you see, I remember looking back at films from Christmas time and I look like I'm just in like this, like all the time, just sad all the time. So I'm going to say that it wasn't until I started my journey that I understood, you know, my dad, it was his time. He chose to go. That was the first time I ever learned that you choose to go, you know? So yeah, so I've come to terms, you know, I miss him. Yeah. I hear his voice sometimes. I would dream about him, but although he wouldn't talk in my dreams, he would just be there. He wouldn't even say anything. So, but I can feel him more here spirit wise. But yeah, I think there was a lot of guilt. Like I should have drove home to, you know, be with him during surgery. That's always that afterthought. It's like, well, you couldn't, you had 2 young kids. How could you couldn't have done that? Like the guilt of that, you know?
Yeah. Yes. I think in my mourning process, obviously what I learned through it with Andrew was to let go, to let him go. I think, as I explained before, you know, the release and the terrible sadness I was holding wouldn't allow him to release, to go on his journey. So I had to check that myself, you know, actually say, otherwise I'm calling him back continually. I think we said this earlier on in the show. And also, yeah, I think what's really important as well, maybe it was, I don't think it was just my situation, but also to remember the happy times, which obviously both of you are able to do now. You know, both of you have had that experience now. So, but it is very difficult, isn't it, to say to people who are mourning, don't mourn, or mourn in a different way. Or, you know, you can't say don't grieve. It's all right, you know, it's all good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, I mean, one of the biggest problems I think we have is all of this is if people don't recognize there's an unseen world, and that the unseen aspect of dying is as important as the seen aspect. So, you know, like people, or many people, don't have the belief we do of the ancestors being there when you pass to meet you. I mean, you know, there are different beliefs other to ours that do, but I mean, if people, I was going to say, if they had that as their belief, I have a great comfort from that, knowing the ancestors are there, so that when I pass, whenever that is, I will meet them again and they will be there. And so many people don't even accept there's an unseen world. And I think for them, dying must be quite frightening, as you were saying earlier. But it's interesting, isn't it? We say people don't have any beliefs, and yet when people themselves are dying and are a great deal of pain and near death, many do call out for God or angels, or they suddenly realize they do have some sort of belief.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is innate in us somewhere, but all the programs have shut that down. And then not maybe until the last moment that they're suddenly calling out. And of course, I mean, it's not like it's ever too late, is it? It's just that I think we could bring more dignity, not in the case of Dale or Amy or maybe myself, or many cases, but like I was saying before, people who do die alone in hospital and in these isolated, away from family and so on, there's a lot of the sacredness of dying has been lost, hasn't it? With nurses aren't necessarily trained in the sacredness of dying, or how to be soul midwives.
And the beds as well, with all the death energy on the beds. So say if someone's died and put all that death energy and all that scaredness in it, and all these hospital beds have all those just embedded into them.
Yeah.
Well, you can't see them washing their sheets in salt water, can
saging the bed. Saging today.
if you took that as an idea into the NHS, but they do have soul midwives in hospitals now. I don't know what it's like in the US. I know there are.
No, I've never heard of that. Wow.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to say too is, so my mother-in-law died, I think 12 years ago. She was on this side. She was near us in a nursing home, right? So again, my kids have been through a lot of deaths since, 3 deaths before they were 10, Okay, so this is so weird now that I think of this. So I'm visiting her with my daughter one day, and it's in the afternoon. And we could talk about this because she was talking, but she had Alzheimer's. So she was, kind of out of it. But she was talking so weird. This voice sounded like, I'm going to say devilish, coming from her. And I'm like, she's dying. Like, she's dying. That's what I said, to myself. So I called my husband. I'm like, I think your mom's dying. You need to get over here. I'm thinking, how did I know this? There was something that clicked that said she's going, and she did that night. We sat with her from.
Was it an anger? Was it a type of anger?
Yeah, it was that. It was like this, it was like a weird sound I've never heard anybody say.
That's so they say that a lot. Not everyone, but a lot of people before they die, the day before they die, they get really angry, and they get ridiculous angry. And it happened to my dad. When I went around for lunch, you couldn't even do a wrong. My mum couldn't do a wrong move next to him. He'd just completely flip out. And we went to I remember going to Morrison's, and I think one thing he wanted was a chicken sandwich and coleslaw and all the different stuff from Morrison's he used to love. And you actually saw his face light up when you mentioned obviously having food. Food made him light up a little bit. So he was eating that, but the littlest thing would irritate him. And he got sick. I remember him getting really angry, and I've never seen him like that. And I've never seen him like that around my mum or Gabrielle. Never saw him that angry. And he was serious anger. And you just heard him scream, "What's the fucking point?" Shouting at it, and you I completely understood him. What's the fucking point? You've got do you know what I mean? If I was in your shoes and I wasn't able to, so his left leg, and this again is spiritual contracts and karma and resolution happening when obviously it was all going on. His left leg, his left arm, sorry, he looked like he had no muscle all on his left side. So he was skin and bones basically on one side. He was big belly from the steroids, but his left arm, because of the tumor was pushing on one bit, his left side and his left leg were just bones. Like they couldn't get any muscle, couldn't put anything on there. So he couldn't walk or anything like that. And his eye, like you saw his eye, you could see the pressing up against his eye. So his eye was like being pushed as well. And it was just, it was one of the worst things you could possibly see as seeing someone so close to them to be in that much pain. And from him doing that, and obviously me seeing that and going through that and being before him, like the night before he died, it's just, yeah, death's a funny thing, a really, really funny thing. Yeah, so I completely connect with what you're saying about that, because it happened with my dad as well. He got really angry the night before.
Yeah, but it's like you couldn't even, because she didn't know who we were. And I couldn't even make out the words. That's why it was so grovelly and but I don't know. Do you know like the death rattle? The death rattle that happens? Have you heard of that?
Oh yes,
I've heard of
yeah,
it,
because air being the, I'll look it up. Air being the last element to leave the body as well. And it's interesting. I think somebody pointed out to me, because breath is your first element to come in, I guess. I don't know. We take a breath when we're born, and our last breath when we die. And somebody said to me the same letters in birth and death are in breath, which I thought was interesting. So let's have a look and see what the death rattle is, because I've heard of it.
Because I've heard it. So from my mother-in-law, I heard it coming from her. And it's like, like right here. It's like right here. This just, you could hear it rattle when she would take a breath in, and rattle and it would come out. It sounded like just like a rattlesnake.
Yeah, so it's a common symptom in the dying phase, which is caused by an accumulation of secretions in the upper airway. Accumulation of fluid, mucus, cannot easily be coughed up or swallowed by the patient, often as a result of diminished consciousness. Yes. There we go.
One. Soiling themselves as well is one of them as well, before they die.
And the curled toes?
Yeah.
You heard the curled toes? Yeah.
No, I've not heard of that one. Yeah, I think we said earlier that apparently, according to these shamanic notes I took, incontinence comes on as the second element to start being, the body's affected by water, first by earth, the bones and flesh, etc. And then it's the water element of the body that gets affected. So look, guys, we've all had this experience of death. What do you think people can do? I know every situation is different. You're going to get some people who have a much slower death, like my father compared to Dale's father, which was very quick. But a lot of people watching this shows are, I think mostly spiritual, actually, if they're watching Talking Stick Show. And
only trolls out there.
Yes. Which will, they might be interested in shamanic stuff as well. What can we do as individuals in our own family, or is that too difficult to one because each situation is different? What can we do to honor death more? And as a society, what can we do to honor death more?
Me personally, I think what happens is when people die is when you celebrate, people kind of celebrate the life and just get pissed out the face, and they don't remember it or don't honor them in any way. They just basically go into the trauma and go into the unhappiness. It would be great to see more people who come together and have a ritual, maybe even around the grave or out like that once a year, just to honor them, put an offering on, and just honoring their life and saying some words to them, saying some prayers to them. I think that the aspect of what the world imprints us on is not the right way, and I think we've lost that touch of how to do it properly. So I'd say probably more prayer and I think children as well. It's a funny one with kids, because all the kids, they deal with death so much easier because they're in such an innocent state and accepting state and in the now. And so yeah, going back to the question would be probably having some sort of ritual, even if you're not spiritual, just something to honor them in such a focused state and celebrate them, instead of, right, oh, he's dead, let's go out and just get absolutely hammered like everyone does at the funeral, then they're all off on their own lives again. And not saying drinking's bad. I drank a lot when my dad died, but I still took my time aside to have fire ceremonies to honor him and let him go and see him in that way. So yeah, look, Amy.
Yeah. So back in the day, I would say, being Catholic still, it would be, lighting a candle at the church for him, or, we can have a mass said for him in his honor. There were things like that. So we did that, visiting the grave whenever I would go home, doing that, putting, beer there for him. Which I didn't even know what I was doing. This is so weird. That's why it's so weird. It's like, I didn't even realize that that's, part of all this that I'm learning. So, and, just the funny stories, like share the funny stories, share the stories, so that they can be passed down. I think that's important. My brothers have so many stories about my dad. And when they visited me a couple months ago, it was like, wow, I didn't even know this. Like, so he shared more stories, with them. But just that, I think that is real important. I would want my kids to do that for me, just, share those stories that make you laugh.
Yeah, beautiful. What about in the pre-death process, so the dying process? I think one thing that is missing is the vigiling. So the setting up of sacred space, the lighting a candle, the cleanliness within the room, the prayer time with the person, reading poems and things to them, and actually getting a state and a place of deep peace for them. And in, when you look at the elderly and who pass on in old people's homes, and I'm not knocking, the carers, because the carers absolutely do their best. And we know that they're, given too much to do and too much expected of them. And we know the sort of energies that they have to go in when they're working. But I think if there was some sort of training in the industry, in the caring industry, especially in these old people's homes where people pass over, some sort of training for carers. So first of all, we've got the carers having to look after the dying and not necessarily well equipped to do so, especially if they're younger, although they might be as younger. I mean, who knows? But also care of the carers themselves, who have to go through this bereavement process, because carers can get very attached to the clients in the home. They can do, and they might miss that smile they see every day, or that wave, and they don't get any time off for mourning or to deal with it. They don't, as far as I know from the carers I've spoken to, there's very little support for them that way. And they're taking this grief home, they're taking all these energies home. And if we could give, in fact, I've done it, that's why I'm able to talk a little bit about it. I did a 4-point plan, like I did it on a little, just a little note, a bookmark size, and I took it in locally to some carers, 4 things they could do, which is like a spiritual hygiene to cleanse themselves of some of the energies they're going to be carrying home. Because every day they're walking into a soup of different energies, old people, the people who are visiting, and then especially the dying energies. And a simple thing like a salt bath for the carers, simple things like that will make a lot of difference. And no wonder carers get very tired. They get very exhausted. They get emotionally, mentally exhausted, as well as physically exhausted. It's very physical work looking after elderly people as well. But there's the emotional and the mental side, which seems to get overlooked. So I think we need care of the carers to be more widespread. And then I think we need care of the dying to be more widespread, and for people to understand and become, maybe if nurses in those situations could also become like energy technicians, so that they're managing the energy from life to death. And it will be really great actually one day to have a soul walker on a soul midwife on, these people
that'd be
who
sweet.
actually, wouldn't it? Because these people actually do the whole process. They set it up beforehand, things I've just been talking about, you know, the vigiling, and then the greeting the ancestors and helping this person. They set up sacred space, some of them, you know, it is a very shamanic practice, and they're then able to help people to pass over peacefully and in the right way. Because I guess if you've passed, I mean, guys, people who get blown up and so on, and your soul gets fragmented and stuff like that. You know, we've got so many different angles of this. But if you've got just a person in a care home who's passing, or in hospital with trained people, it will make an awful lot of difference to the next part of the soul journey. If you two got anything you know, you could add to that.
That sounds amazing.
Sounds what we need, doesn't it?
It sounds like, yeah. I mean, I just kind of took myself through all the, like being able to do that. I lost my thought, but yeah, go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, I stuff like that, and like even something as simple as having a deep tissue massage to physically remove all the trauma of death, which will be imprinted in you when you're next to someone and they're dying all the time. It's going to go in to the muscle memory and fascia, and your body's going to start to just be feeling weird all the time. And I don't know this personally, but I would think if it would be great to speak to a lot of them and see if that does happen for them, whether they just have these weird strange feelings. Because I remember when my dad passed away, my mum had basically his physical memory just stored inside of her, just stuck there, and it was just, she wasn't going to be able to get rid of it unless she had real deep tissue body work. So just even stuff like that, like you said, Laura, salt baths and learning a bit of hygiene. It doesn't have to be crazy spiritual. We have lost that death connection, haven't we? And it's kind of feel like it's been set up in that way to disconnect us from death, and all the Western society, and all of, obviously, when say America became America, the natives changed off the land, and their view of death, where they honored the ancestors, they would have had it in ceremony and so on, that disappeared from the land. And same happened to England as well, with all the tribes and Scottish tribes and the Picts and all the Celtics and stuff. It was all ceremonial, the death, and honored in the right way. And it felt like now it's just all about the commercialization of it, the people making a lot of money from the funerals. For the bloody casket, you're talking like £1,000 or just over, you know, just to have the coffin and stuff like that. Sometimes it's just, then the gravestone you've got as well, another few grand. It's just like it's like wherever the civic. I'm going to choose my words carefully when I'm speaking about this, but because we don't know what's listening. But innately, having that kind of spiritual essence and ritual behind it is important, even for them crossing over. Do you imagine the amount of souls in cities who don't cross over properly, who get stuck, become ghosts? Just having someone there to put the focus on making sure they're crossed over fully, and so on. So definitely important.
And hospitals, as you say, you know, about the number of people who die in that bed. And what a difference, you know, washing those sheets in salt would make. And I understand that in some ways we are a long way from that, but you know, it just takes somebody to go in or a group to go into hospitals without any resistance, because we're meeting so much resistance. But let's say when I went to see the group of, I think there were a dozen carers I spoke to, one carer did saging already, which I was so impressed with. I didn't think that was too bad out of 12. And the others were very receptive, but the manager didn't take it any further, which is fine. They all had my number. They could call me if they needed any more help. So, you know, 1 in 12, it's not bad, but you'd really like to be able to help more of them. But it's, you know, it's everybody's own personal journey and their level of consciousness at the time. And of course, it's not just the carers in homes and that I'm talking about as well, because Dale's mum was a carer, as as you just pointed out. Many of us have been carers, but there is this lack of awareness in hospitals and so on, of places where they pass, and how the unseen structure works in these places, and the pretty much the ghostly structure as well, like Dale was saying, without getting too much into that exists, which makes it one, really important that this does in the future come in at some time, and two, because we should be honouring death, as Dale was just saying. There should be some sort of sacredness about it. Some sort yes, there's honour for a life lived, and we can do that in the morning, but the honour of that actual passing of that soul, because it's ready for another journey, isn't it? The soul is about to go on another journey.
And that's the hardest part about, I think, mourning and grieving, is the acceptance of their greater journey, and accepting they're going on to a different path now, and they've chosen to do this and walk away from this path. Obviously they'll come back, but when they do eventually go into carnate, into bodies, that's their next journey, isn't it, and their next stage. And yeah, that's why it taught me to appreciate friends, family, because it is like what we're having now, like what, say 50, 60 years ago, 60 years future now, we'll be in the spirit world. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's like these moments of the now have to be embraced and appreciate them, because what can we do, what's the best we can do in the moment of the now. And I remember my gran was a great teacher, because she, before I was spiritual at all, when I was 15, 16, I had a dream, a bit older than that, I'd say probably about 18. I had a dream where I was sat beside her, and she was like a young version of herself, and there was actually sacred geometry all in the bit distance, and it was like all lit up in these different languages, and had the Ferris wheel of sacred geometry just going round, like all these different shapes and stuff like that. And that for me was so special. It really, really was. And all of these ladies who are powerful shamans and great, like, consciousness explorers, old souls, loads of different varieties of these people in nursing homes, and it's having to accept that, but still seeing them for all the individuality of how beautiful our family and friends are, even though if they don't choose a spiritual path. And that's a great thing what Andrew taught me about my grandma. Very incredible lady. I had a really deep connection with her, and she was the first person I ever saw die, and I knew I was spiritually contracted to see that, and she was there to teach me that I've gone, look what's left behind, it's just a bag. And that was for me, when I saw her dead, I was like, that's not her, it's just a bag left over. It was literally like a bag of like water, really weird, didn't look anything like her. And that for me was an awakening in itself, to see her and know that, oh God, she's actually passed on, she's gone. And then she visited me, which was great, in the dream space, and I know she's going to be there when I do pass on. Andrew said she's going to wait, she's not going to come back in a body anytime soon, she's going to wait till we're well into our change, and he means well into the change. So I know when I know she'll be waiting for me when I cross over. I know she'll be there straight away, my grandma. And I have ceremonies where I talk to her. I ask her how the ancestral homeworld is. I've asked her to describe it to me, and she basically was saying it's a lot like here. There's loads of different fields you can have it, but you can bilocate and go to different places at will. You can go to one and create like a field or a forest. There's many different areas to it. It's not just thinking in this reality. She can go to different ones at time and create like a different reality, so to say. So that for me was amazing. And like you said, Laura, having the ceremony to connect to them, very important. And everyone out here is listening. If you don't want to, if you haven't spoke to them, have a ceremony, get some sage, raise your frequency enough to speak to them, and see if you can have a conversation with them. It's sometimes hard with family, isn't it, when you try and speak to them on the other side, because you can get emotionally attached to not believing it, or kind of like lost in your own idea of who they are, but they're a completely different person now.
Yeah.
I was
So-
oh Go ahead, Laura.
No, I was going to ask you a question, so you carry
Oh,
on.
go
Amy.
ahead. Go ask me a question.
And
No,
one,
I was.
Nope.
Go on.
one
Okay.
quick one before the last thing I'd like to say about my grandma. So she had a song for a funeral, which I'm gonna have the same song for my funeral because it meant so much to me. And when I was a kid, I was listening to it. It was incredible. It was the Israel Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And I remember that came on, and that was her favorite song ever. And like when I listened to it and heard it, I like it made in a funeral when the song was playing. I was just like, obviously that message that she has gone over to the other side, and there was something really fucking grandmother about her, but she never really talked much. But I had such a deep connection with her, and like you with your father, Laura, and Amy, you with yours. You've got past life and all of this different realities of relationships coming in, and yeah, it's a funny world, but
anywhere. It is
so many different perspectives on this, so many different layers, aren't there?
Yeah, because one layer I was thinking of, so what if, I always ask myself, well, what if all of the people like in the nursing homes, the nurses, the doctors are, to me, I just got the feeling of like they could be already shamans. I mean, look what they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look how they
healers on one level. Yeah,
they're definitely healers. I think what needs to be added in the curriculum is the rundownness that they get, or the clearing that they need from their body. But I just thought, I'm like, they feel to me as if they're shamans, because some of the ones I've come in contact are so just gentle and sweet, and
oh yes,
and the doctors, the way they speak to you about giving you bad news. I mean, I don't know, it just feels like they're on the right track. It's just maybe add something to the curriculum on this aspect of it.
But, I mean, I think it's certainly within all of us and within our DNA, but it's a question of their level of consciousness. See, what we're really knocking is the system. It's not the people.
No.
So a lot of people over here, as Dale knows, will knock the NHS, our National Health Service. Maybe it's the way it's run, but it's not the people within the National Health Service, because every time I've been looked after amazingly, and I've not had to call on sort of a doctor or anything until this last year with having my TIA. So and also I became very light worker about it. Like I wouldn't go to the doctor, and I wouldn't even take cough medicine, which we had this discussion on the Light Worker show. Which, Andrew, for goodness sake, yes, that's right. You don't know what's in it, but it will help your cough. I don't care. I could be making something that will make me ill. Anyway, that's by the by. So having sort of mostly got over that, and then having to go into the Scottish hospitals and the English hospitals, my goodness, what marvelous people who look after you. And I won't necessarily say for very little money, but we both know the system has got so many things out of whack, what footballers are paid compared to nurses and doctors and so on, and the training, the things that they don't put in the training, and then the hours they have to work and so on. What a wonderful set of people, right down to the receptionists. So it's the system that is geared up to disconnect them from their heart, try and disconnect them from their hearts. And yet we know from the treatment we're getting, many are very heart connected and very caring. They're just not given the facilities, the funds and so on, the resources to do this, because I'm sure a lot more nurses and carers would like to spend longer with the person they're looking after, and to sit and read them a book. But we're back to the Babylonian money system, aren't we? There's no room in their profit margins for that to take place. That's where the heart disconnection is. But then we're looking at a system that's run it that way for a number of years. And it's almost like the people within the system, as they raise their consciousness, will change the system from within. Although, and maybe they will bring forward ideas, and maybe if their boss is more receptive and has more awareness, and then those sort of changes can take place. And you do see it every day. You do see it every day in hospitals, and this, you know, they are able to outcreate the system. Sometimes I've seen red tape just cut through so that, like, for example, getting my mum home where she'd be happy rather than in hospital. They skipped some things for me because they could see my mum was unhappy and wanted to go home. So, you know, when you leave it to people who are working from heart-spaced awareness, you get some tremendous results, you know, and that's medicine in itself, isn't it?
Yes.
That is also medicine. I actually wanted to do a show sometime, Dale. I thought on the two aspects of medicine, because there's modern medicine and shamanic medicine, and where the two meet. Yeah, that would be an interesting one, wouldn't it? But it's the meeting of the
mentioning the medicine companies.
Oh,
yeah. No, I'm not mentioning what the P word.
Tiptoeing. We'll have to
Big
tiptoe
P.
from now on.
Yes, for tiptoe.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, you know, it's not being too extreme about it. Like you well pointed out, Amy, you know, they are a lovely bunch of people who work so hard for us, and so many are heart connected.
Like all these like even surgeons, say you've got a heart surgeon, you imagine how many lives he would have saved from doing heart transplants, heart surgery and stuff like that. And they are shamans. A lot of them will have psychic surgeon. They've been powerful psychic surgeons in past lives and off world, and I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them are very powerful shamans. And these doctors and heart people who do operations, it's a very skilled thing to do.
yeah.
And there's some very smart geniuses within it. And like you say,
yes.
it's kind of like they are milked a little bit. And it's the same
Yeah.
with nurses. Like you say, I think a nurse should be at least on 80 grand a year, 90 grand, then going up to 100 grand. But nurses are on such a bad wage. It's disgusting, really, for what they do and the effort they do and what they put in. And Gabrielle was about to do midwifery course and she stopped because she went onto a midwife forum, and all of these people who did midwifery did work in the NHS, and they were so unhappy because of how fucking overridden they were that they stopped. So yeah, they got to look after them a bit more and stuff like that.
Yeah. And when I guess the management and that consciousness rises, then that will change. It's not going to be overnight, but you know, maybe just a little discussion like this will help people recognize what is missing in our treatment of the dying process, what we're not understanding. And you don't have to be shamanic to understand that. Just maybe some beliefs that take it beyond the physical world. And you want that person to have a good journey in the next world. So so you read your little piece at the front at the beginning, Amy. So would be really interested if you had another conversation with death.
Oh, good homework.
Yes. Wouldn't it? What do you think, Dale? If she if you, because that was so beautifully done that now you've got some new insights and some you know, with what you've been sharing tonight, because obviously it's got the mind as well, the brain cells revitalized on this subject. So maybe that's something you'd like to
I will
take another conversation with death, and we'll come on and let's see where we are with that. We can expand the subject a bit more. Well,
I've got there's a lady who has been a client once, and she's a deaf doula, or what, I'm not sure, 100% sure of the name. I could always try and ask.
Midwife.
Yeah, that's
the soul midwife. Yeah, it is a doula, isn't it? Yeah.
Doula, and see if they could come on and we could speak to someone who deals with deaf on a regular basis and ask them some questions.
That would be really cool.
Let's do it.
Cool. That would be cool.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do it from somebody who does it, you know, sort of day in, day out, as it were.
Yeah.
Or does it as a profession. And why shouldn't it be a profession? It's so needed, isn't it? And I
Yes.
do, I
Yeah.
think I did read it is in some hospitals, but none that I've ever come across.
Mm.
You know, those
Um,
those at the beginning and at the end of life are very important roles
Yes.
Yeah.
in this world.
Yeah,
So-
true. The nurses that are there at the delivery and the doctor
Mm.
that's there. Yeah. The doctor you
Mm.
choose, you know. I remember when I delivered both my kids, I was at a teaching hospital. So I had a big crowd of nurses around. So, you know, it was kind of cool. It's like, yeah, sure, come on in. You know? But that's kind of cool now that I think about that. Like, interesting. All of these students, young 20-year-olds, you know, watching it, and they weren't any much older than me. I think I was 26 at the time. So yeah, just, you know, where are they now? Where, you know, I don't know. It just seems so cool. Like
That part does. What would be really great if those students could go to and hold vigil with a dying person, because you can imagine a few people with the right mindset, or rather the right heart mindset, around the bed
yes.
of a person who is dying. What could be achieved? Yeah, I'd like to ask more about that. A soul midwife's view on that, because you know, people heart connected in that space, if they're heart connected or can be there at the delivery
Mhm.
of the start of life, why can't they do the same thing at the end of life, you know, to
Mhm.
help raise all the frequencies and the energies in the room? Or why don't they have some even sound? You know, sound is so important, isn't it? You know, some beautiful music or
Mhm.
something peaceful, because in the end, I'm guessing I would want peace.
Mhm.
Peace as
Well,
I pass.
I think they have. You'll have to look it up because I've not fully researched it, but I've heard people talk about it. There's an organization who do mushrooms before people pass away. So for people who haven't are not spiritual at all, they'll like take a low dose of mushrooms. They up till the day they pass, or maybe weeks before, or whatever it was, and it really helps them with the death process, come to terms and peace with themselves.
Right.
And that's
Wow.
just something to look
Mm.
into. I'm not. I heard Joe Rogan, a lot of people talk about it. That there's places out there which people come when they're about to die, and they'll go and do some mushrooms and stuff like that. And I think it's beautiful because it gives them an idea of the spirit world. Because when you're on mushrooms, you're very connected to the spirit world, and it must be that nice feeling of you're like, wow, there is something out there, and
Mm.
that relief
never-
of fear would release
Mm.
from you, wouldn't it? Not saying
Mm.
for everyone, but for a lot of people, if I was a bit scared of death and I had an experience like that, it would give me a bit of comfort to know that there is something out there.
Totally.
I'm a virgin at mushrooms, so I wouldn't know.
There's still time, Amy.
No,
There's still
is there
time.
I am
Plenty of time.
Don't take any more than a gram, you'll be fine.
Oh no, I
No
need
more than
people
a gram.
around me. I have no idea what's going to happen. No idea. But it sounds like fun when people talk about it.
Yeah.
I think what we've established from this, so what I like about this, so we've established it's not just that within the dying process, there's all sorts of effects on other people. So the carers, the nurses, and so on, as well as the dying. And I think we've also established that some of the heart connection has been lost. I'm not saying in the individual staff who are doing it, but we would need greater greater heart connection. We would need to bring back some of the dignity and honor into the death process. That's something we could actually, anybody watching this, if they want to write anything on this, I think we could almost put I certainly did some of this when I because it is actually on my website that we do this caring for the carers sort of thing, and dealing and helping carers and helping people in the death process. I've not had much practice in it, but it's something I'd like to look more into. So it'd be great to get, I don't know. I remember Andrew saying, I ought to write a care of the carers booklet after my
Yeah.
dad passed, and I think that was to get me some focus. And I started writing it but didn't finish. Well, I finished it somewhat because I obviously went to see some carers and had something I could take them. But I think this is, I don't know how widespread this is anywhere. You know, this is for it to be implemented in the caring industry, to be implemented in hospitals. I think it's something that could be written as a package and put out there. But whether we are a little bit ahead of our time, who knows? Just
Yeah.
a suggestion. I think
I
there is a huge marketing opportunity. Put it that way.
I think so, Laura.
Yeah,
But I
if
do,
you could,
I do. I think that needs to be, that just even you writing it is already done. It's already rippling
I
out.
like that. Yes,
You know?
I like that. Yes,
Just
yes, it is the
it's
fact that it's put in writing.
and you
Yeah.
put little pamphlets out there and little restaurants
Yeah.
and I mean,
Yeah.
just send me
Yeah.
some and I'll put them around.
Yeah, something that somebody could take up and make a
Yeah.
lot of money probably from writing. I just haven't had the time, or it's
Yeah.
not been my particular area to go into. But it is something that I think will come up. I think this will happen.
Yeah.
Put it that way. I think we're in the natural organic evolution of things.
Mhm.
I think that's something that has got to come up in the future. I'm sure there's many people out there nudging the NHS or all over the world for people to have a bit more respect during death in the system. I'm not saying at home because each of those situations are different.
What about making a prayer for our own death?
Yeah,
Mm.
that's a beautiful idea.
That's
Yes.
a good idea.
Yeah.
So we're prayer forward in time and keep building it over through your life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
adding more to
Wow.
it.
How powerful would that be?
Your eulogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do have a
And like
question.
Go on, Amy.
Go ahead.
Oh, I do have a question to ask. What I think for people to understand, if we can. So what about stepping on someone's journey during the death process when they get that news or when they, how do we not step on it? Because we want them to live, as much as we want them to live, they may not want the care. They may not want the chemo. They may not want that. Like that's an honoring.
Yeah, absolutely.
know?
So it has to be their choice, doesn't it?
Yeah, even though
has to be their choice.
Yeah, even though we don't think that that's the right choice, but that's
It's not our journey. Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Because we don't know what's happening.
Call.
Yeah,
No.
Like even that perspective, and my nan passed away, and we had all problems with the doctors and nurses that we felt my mum felt they weren't doing the right things, and they were asking for stuff and nothing came. Oh, I don't know why I've clicked video off. My USB is, sorry about that. USB was.
It's all right. You're in the dark now.
He's
gone into his cupboard.
It's completely not recognizing my camera. Let's try one more time. 1 second.
We can hear you fine.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll just put that
Okay.
off. One sec. Someone's here at the door, so continue on. I'll be 1 minute. Someone's just knocked on.
Okay. So yeah, Amy, what you're saying about treading on their journey, absolutely. And it is a difficult one because you so want to help them.
yeah,
What you do when they are not able to make their own decisions, like in Alzheimer's or
right.
dementia, that is a difficult call, isn't it? That is a difficult one. And I think all you can do, what would I do? Just go from heart space, heart-spaced awareness, and with prayers and so on, and try and get some unseen help. I mean, anyone watching this is going to have a belief where they will call on the unseen, I hope. So you have to go with the wisdom within of what is the best thing to do. The natural thing is want to save a life.
You're right.
But that can be a fruitless journey if their spiritual contract is to go.
Sorry.
Go on.
Yeah.
So many equations
Sorry, Laura.
to
The
this.
thing that's out now. The thing I wanted to add connected to that was, so when my nan was differently, they were all annoyed about the doctors and everything because they stopped giving her they stopped. I can't remember what they gave her, but they gave her something which kept giving her a bit more oomph and to not die and pass away. They came to a realization that she was going to pass soon and they're not going to help her, give her any antibiotics or anything like that. They refused to give her any more treatment because they knew they're just stopping the inevitable. So they had to deal with that when she was dying, them telling them we're not doing anything to help her anymore because she's going to die. And if we give her this now, it's just going to extend it for another, say, 4 hours. So that was hard for them. And so when she died, I think it took her 6 hours. Basically, when my granddad was shouting at her, just please die. Just go. And he went over her face and she didn't, but to put her out of the pain because she kept coming back, coming back. And this happened for 6 hours and they were just watching her coming back, going. And it was such a horrible, like traumatic state. But when I asked Andrew about it, he's saying that all of those doctors and nurses were spiritually contracted, and the horrible death she had, she wanted to go through it as a soul. So all of this care and everything like that, she wanted to go through it because in a life review, she'd never repeat that type of life again. So it was a marker stone for her soul to make sure she didn't repeat a pattern she ever did again of that. So she actually chose to die really slowly and horrible. And all the confusion with all the nurses and stuff, it was all contracted to happen and she wanted it to. So that for me was a big lesson of sometimes shit can happen, but sometimes that shit's meant to happen, and to accept that and not hold on to it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. I've lost you. I don't know whether you can hear me.
We can see
Can you sorry, the signal's been really shit when I moved.
No,
So,
yeah, your signal's coming and going, but I am.
It is because I've moved rooms.
Okay, I don't know where
I can
can't
see you. I can see
if
you.
you
Laura.
can see me, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
If you can see me,
I'm not
that's
putting the
good
video on
enough.
because I've got not many bars anyway.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh, there we go. I pressed the wrong buttons. It's not having my glasses on, see. Anything could happen when I haven't got my glasses on.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a really, really fascinating conversation, hasn't it?
Yes.
You know, and there's so many more equations to this and so many more layers and levels to this that it'd be great if writing the prayer thing. I like our own prayer.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
let's do another show like middle of Jan, and I'll try and get someone on to who deals, and if any you two as well, see if anybody you can find anyone, and we'll get someone, invite them on and see if they want to come on, and we'll speak to someone who deals with it like a daily process passing away, and kind of interview them.
Yeah.
And let's get Andrew on to correct everything we've said that might not be quite right, or certainly to get his perspective would be good, because I'm not saying this right or wrong here. I'm just putting forward my experience. We all are. Our experiences, can they help other people? And hey, there's a whole much bigger picture, isn't there, to this, a bird's eye view. And we all know death is not the end. It's the start of another journey. And it's defined.
And we'll be all laughing at each other in 60 years, the awakening. Hey! We can survive a bit long now.
Are you getting all light workery here, Dan?
Immortality is here.
Guys, it's been really great. Are we happy to wind it up now?
Yes.
Yeah. We need to go get some food, and thank you, Laura, for hosting, and Amy for being here. It's been incredible. I thought, it's really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to see you again, Amy. And we'll do that. We'll find a doula and we'll get chatting again. Thanks so much. Thank you, everybody who's tuned in, listening, past, present, and future. And those on the other side.
Have a great Christmas. Jingle bells.
Yes.
Instead of the death,
Yes,
let's
yes.
put the lights on, put your tree on, let's do this shit.
And
Dance
live.
around.
Yes, live, laugh, and go try some mushrooms, Amy.
No,
Yes.
not without. No, I got to have my peeps with me. You guys.
Yes, yeah, we'll do that. We'll have to
Okay.
do that. We'll have to do
When we-
that. You'll have to come on the Scottish tour. Not that I'm saying that's going to happen on the Scottish tour. I'm just saying if you
Ooh.
have an opportunity to come on the Scottish tour,
I'm
perhaps
sure
you
we can
should.
find them somewhere.
I
Thank you,
didn't say
everyone.
that at all.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dale.